Hey everybody, welcome to 1200 XL. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Kangaroo.
Yeah.
Now, where do you stand on that Timey Kangaroo Down sport song?
Like it. I like it. I like kangaroos as animals. You know, we went to that crazy drive-through zoo a couple years ago. Remember that I told you about that?
Yeah, over in Wytheville, right?
It's somewhere in Virginia, man. I don't know. So we're there, and of course, there's part of it. There's an actual zoo. You get out and walk around. And so there's kangaroos at the zoo, a ton of them, right? They're milling around, you know. And I take the kid, I'm like, look at this, there's kangaroos here. The kangaroos aren't doing much. And the kid's like, not that. And there's a path you walk through the kangaroo sanctuary, and it's fenced off. And then there's another smaller kangaroo sanctuary off to the side, right? So we walk through the kangaroo sanctuary, we go on and do some other crap. Well, there's this huge, hideous storm of doom that comes moving through Virginia, right? This is one of those killer storms. So we see it coming, and we're like, oh, crap. We got to get to the car. We're going to get murdered by this storm. So we're rolling through the kangaroo habitat. The kangaroos see the storm coming. They're not screwing around. These suckers are jumping from one habitat. They're jumping over the fence, over the path for people, and over the other fence into the other habitat.
Are they allowed to do that?
Who's going to stop them?
It's true.
They're freaking. That's natural. These suckers can jump. You know, when you see cartoons, you're like the things are kind of hopping along. You're like, no, that you're not doing them justice. These suckers have leg strength to beat the band because these things ain't small, man. They're huge.
Oh yeah,
they can go. And so you know how they've got the gimmick where kangaroo boxes a dude. You know what I mean? You ever seen that?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Try to box kangaroo. Listen. Man has no chance against kangaroo.
No.
And if these things kick you, God help you. They'll knock you from here to Sunday. Bad move. But the kangaroos are cool looking. I really dug them. We don't have that many here in the States, just in zoos. But I watched a video the other day from Australia where this dude was sitting in his house and a kangaroo came up to his back deck and was trying to get in. It was kicking the door and crap. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we view kangaroos as like these super mega exotic animals, and I guess in certain parts of Australia they're as common as like deer are here. So pretty crazy.
You know, Australia, I got to give those people props. You know, because they live in a land filled with kangaroos and spiders the size of like a hubcap. These suck, and they've got all these killer
Everything's
animals.
Gonna kill you over there, man.
Listen. What the hell are we doing there? We need to move out of there. That should just be a huge island zoo, like Jurassic Park,
right.
You know?
That
man was not meant to live there. I feel bad. You know, the toughest suckers on earth must live down in Australia, you know?
That's right. That's
Listen,
right.
When a spider, right, that is big enough that it could cover your whole head like a brain sucker comes rolling into town, I'm gone.
Yeah.
You know, I want suckers. You can stomp them with a shoe. That's it. Anything bigger than that, I'm out. I don't like spiders. I don't like weird lizards. They got man-eating lizards over there. You know, we don't need that. And no good. But yeah, the kangaroo is a cool creature. And so when they made the transition into video games, this was probably their biggest success, right? Because there were other kangaroo games that haven't done so well.
Yeah. I think this has got to be the biggest kangaroo-based game of all time.
Wasn't there what was it, Chaos the Kangaroo? Wasn't that a game?
That was a game. That
was on the...
That was the newer game, right? That was something that was like a PlayStation 1 era thing, right?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think it was like one of those mascot games. You know, they ever had to have... This game here pits kangaroos against monkeys, right? Now, are there monkeys in Australia, Boat?
Boy, I don't think so. I mean, I've never... Well, I don't want to say...
Put it in chat.
Yeah.
Help us out here. If there are I don't think there are monkeys down there.
Yeah, you don't really hear about monkeys being down there, but I'm not going to say that there aren't.
Let's say there were, right? Okay. Now, this game pits monkeys against kangaroos. Who do you got? If you had a bunch of monkeys and a couple kangaroos, who do you got?
Well, this is one of those, like, would you rather go up against like a million tiny horses or one horse the size of a barn? It's one of those, you know, arguments. It's the classic.
I've never heard that.
The classic argument.
I've never heard that argument in my life. A million tiny horses versus one horse the size of a barn? Where'd that argument come from?
Well,
it had to be from Kentucky. The only place that horse arguments to come from. It's the stupidest thing. A horse the size of a barn? Who's cleaning up after that horse takes care of its business?
It's one of life's existential questions. It's like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Let's talk about Kangaroo, Aaron.
Yeah, we better move right on to the game here. So, this is a classic arcade game, Bo. Now, actually, I got to ask you ahead of time, did you play this in the arcade? Have you ever played this in an actual arcade machine,
I
Bo?
have never seen this in the arcade. However, if you look behind me, I have the marquee here on the shelf there. So it's a cool looking marquee for sure.
Yeah, it is. So this game got released in the arcade in '82. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, this is some kind of Donkey Kong Kangaroo ripoff. Well, you're sort of right. There has some similarity. Everything gets compared. You ever notice everything gets compared to Donkey Kong, Bo? Everything. If there's a ladder and it's some jumping, it's a Donkey Kong clone. Yeah. Well, that's not fair, is it?
I don't think so.
And this game, much like I look at this game and sort of the same way I look at like a Pooh Yan. Mm-hmm. It's a crazy game from the early '80s that sort of hasn't really been redone. I don't know. This game, would you say this is more or less popular than Pooh Yan, Bo, in terms of overall historical sense?
I would say that Pooh Yan is more popular solely based on the amount of ports that Pooh Yan got. This game was not released on nearly as many consoles and computers.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there, Bo. So now get this, Bo. This came out in '83. Published. Now this is real bizarre, Bo. I don't know if you looked into this. This was published under the APX publishing, which normally that's the Atari Program Exchange, normally reserved for like homebrew type stuff. Why this game was released under the Apex, I find odd.
Well, it's sort of a weird thing because this in itself is a port of the 5200 version. It's identical. It's functionally identical to the 5200 version. It's a real weird chain of events that would cause Atari to, who in turn, okay, let's go back to the beginning. So this is not an Atari game. This was a Sun Computer game out of Japan. This is the company that later became Sunsoft. Okay, so when they
I didn't know that.
So when they released this game in the States, they contracted Atari to release it, just like Taito did with Midway and Space Invaders and all that stuff. So in turn, when Atari wanted to port this to their systems, they didn't develop this internally. They subcontracted out to GCC to do the 5200 version. And then, instead of paying somebody, big bucks to release an Atari 8-bit version, they just got somebody to, I guarantee you the guys that wrote for APX, they were not getting huge dollars compared to, a staff programmer for Atari. So they got one of those guys, made a clone of the 5200 version, which, I mean, under the hood, the 5200 and the Atari 8-bit computers are very similar. So anyway, this is an APX title of a GCC port of an Atari release of a Sunsoft programmed game.
I can even elaborate further, Bo, because everything you said, that was gold. You're correct, mundo, according to my research. So, and by the way, I want to mention that GCC, if they sound familiar to you, they were the people that originally made Mrs. Pac-Man as a clone of Pac-Man. They were one of the people that Atari was going to sue into the Stone Age, and they were like, wait a minute, this is great. Let's bring these guys on board. And so they were actually one of Atari's, they had go to, I guess, software houses for stuff. They were responsible for, among other things, they did Food Fight and Real Sports Tennis. So they were doing some titles.
Okay.
They did those. Okay. They did those for the 8-bits. They did Food Fight. Did you know there was a Food Fight for the 8-bits?
I didn't
know there was one.
Well, it's always hard to tell because when I play so many games off my SD card or my flash card, and I'm never sure if these are commercially released games or just ports of 5200 versions. So Food Fight got a legit commercial release for the Atari 8-bit. You're saying?
Yeah, that's what, according to what I found. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew about the XEG, or the 7800 version, but I didn't know the 8-bits got a version of it. So anyway, they call up GCC. You got all that right. So this is from the guy that programmed the game. The game was programmed by a guy named James Lederman. He's responsible for some real bad games. He was one of the guys that headed up the Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks game.
Oh my gosh!
Played that on the PlayStation. I liked Mortal Kombat, but this game was just absolute crap.
Was this when they took the Mortal Kombat franchise and they made it into like a third-person action game?
That's right.
That's no good. And
you can't do that. It was a disaster. He also did. Now get this. I love this boat. He was behind a bunch of ports to the FM Towns. My ARG is showing here, but we covered the FM Towns. This guy did Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis for the FM Towns. He did Monkey Island 1 and 2 for the FM Towns. He did Loom, and he did Zach McCracken. He was behind all those getting ported to the FM Towns. So this guy was a pretty good programmer. But according to him, this is his words, not mine. This is directly from him. General Computer was contracted to only do a 5200 version of this game. When he was at Atari, he had written a reverse disassembler that converted binary files back into source code, and he'd also written some documentation for it. And so basically what they did was they took that disassembler and they ran this game through it, and that's how they got the 8-bit version.
Wow.
They took the 5200 version and stuck it through there. Now he says they published it with no credit to him, he says that's what he requested. And so he said essentially this was an internal hack. Again, his words, not mine. He said his had red strawberries while the 8-bit one had purplish red or some non-red color. Now, I can even elaborate further on the strawberry color. If you play this in PAL mode, you get the proper coloring. If you play it in NTSC, you get the off-colored like strawberries, allegedly. I didn't load this up in PAL mode, but there's your color difference. So basically, this is an internal Atari disassemblage of the 5200 version, reassembled to play on the 8-bit. Bizarre.
Yeah. So
that is a lot of craziness. So let's get on to the actual game itself. Now, this game didn't get it. You're right. This didn't get a ton of ports, Boatster. This was only out in the Atari 2600 and the Atari 5200 in the arcade version. I've played the 2600 version. It's not too bad.
Listen, man, I actually, the 2600 version looks not great, obviously.
No.
But I think that it actually plays just as well as the Atari 8-bit version. I was really impressed that they managed to get all of the sound in there. They've got all the little tunes that play, so it's not a bad version.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This was released with the APX license, again, the Atari Program Exchange. And this is apparently pretty rare, but I've got a bunch of APX stuff, as you know. I've gotten that hall of stuff.
Yeah.
But this is not one of them. This is, according to Atari Mania, this thing has a rarity rating of 8 out of 10, that's pretty rare. So I'm guessing they didn't move too many of these. I don't think this was ever released on cartridge. As far as I know, it's only released on the disc version.
There was a prototype version of this that exists. I managed to find a very grainy picture of the cart.
Oh yeah,
wow. But it's just a prototype.
So, I will say I've got a little list of differences between the 8-bit. Did you try this the 5200 boat? I had to ask.
Yeah, I did. I played this on the 5200. It plays. Did you find any differences at all between the 5200 and the 8-bit version?
No. Now, and the prototype cartridge you're talking about, it only works on early systems. Okay. Mm-hmm. It has a released version. It says copyright 1982. The prototype says 83. The title screen jumps to advanced difficulty on the disc release. I did notice that.
Right.
The disc release has a demo version, which I noticed that too. I didn't play the cart version. I know this from playing the disc version. Mm-hmm. So all that craziness aside, what is this game? You play a mama kangaroo, and your goal is to rescue your baby from the evil jerk monkeys who have kidnapped the baby for whatever reason. I don't know why they would do that. And on the first screen and subsequent screens, your baby is at the top of the screen or wherever, and they're blindfolded, mm-hmm. which it actually makes. I think the blindfold alone makes it more horrific.
Yeah,
that they've taken this baby hostage, and you're of course you're the mama kangaroo who hops along, but just to fit the stereotype, you've also got a boxing gloves on, so you can whack a sucker if necessary. The controls on this are sort of interesting. You use up, down, left, right to move, including up for jump, your favorite boat, and then you have the button punches. That's the only thing the button does. And so your job is to navigate these various screens to get up and rescue your baby. Now, having played the arcade version, the arcade version is very attractive, I thought, both. And the mama looks good. There's detail there. And the Atari version, while not as detailed, captures the majority of what you would want from the arcade version.
Yeah, I mean, This is one of these games. I've played Kangaroo on the Atari 8-bit approximately 2 billion times. I've played this game forever.
So you played this quite a bit before the show.
Oh yeah. This was one of the games that I played over and over again when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I had forgotten just how good the arcade version looked. This is another one sort of like Popeye, where when you play the home computer version long enough, you start to think that it looks identical to the arcade, and then you go back and you play the arcade. The Kangaroo, especially the Mama Kangaroo, really has very detailed in the arcade version. However, that's really immaterial to the gameplay itself, which the Atari 8-bit version has in spades.
Right. It boils it. These games, just like the 2600 version, they boil these games down to their essence. And you're not going to get a lot of thrill. Now you're getting more than the Atari.
Yeah, at least you're getting colors. The 2600 version is basically just a yellow like ladder and platform zone with a blue background. This mimics the arcade. I would say this is probably, I'd say 60% of the graphical fidelity of the arcade versus the Atari 2600 version is about 10.
Yeah, but they both have the same gameplay elements. I mean, they did for the most part. Now. So you've got several things in this thing. One thing, this game has a little bit in common with Pooyan in the fact that there are trees or things that the monkeys can crawl up and down. They're throwing stuff at you. So aside from the fact that you're on your way up the platforms to rescue your baby for most levels, there's one level that's sort of an anomalous level, which we'll get to. The monkeys will crawl up and down and they will throw apples at you, and sometimes they'll even throw them from the top. So there are multiple monkeys. Now, you've got, and depending on how often you've played this and you sort of know how this game goes, there's the monkey at the top of the screen on the first level, for example. It reminds me a lot of Jumpman. He's going to throw that apple at wherever you're at when he's ready to throw it. That's where he's going to throw it.
Right.
So if you actually hold up, he'll throw it to where you're not. You can sort of keep going. There are tricks like that, stuff you learn after you play it for a while. Of course, you always want to run over and punch monkeys, but often I've found, Bode, that punching the monkeys is a bad idea. Well, except on the one level where you have to punch
you have to factor in the time that it takes for you to roll yourself over there and punch the monkey and then get yourself back. It takes a lot of time away. Yeah,
that's correct. Now, this game has one element that, and that's the jump element that separates from the men from the boys, Bode. I watched many a man play this in the arcade, including myself, that couldn't make several of these jumps. The jumps on this are, I'm not going to say pixel perfect, but close, and you have to get the jump right or you die, and you can die over and over and over and look like a jerk.
Right.
This game, having up for jump, makes it more difficult. It's funny, just as an experiment, Bode, I loaded up my emulator on this, and I mapped up as a button. And I did 1,000 times better like that because I didn't have to have the joystick involved in jumping.
Right.
This is a game. Of course, by doing that, you sort of take away a fundamental part of the game.
Well, I've always said that up for jump is one of those things that is it's a learned skill that once you cross over to having button for jump, it's hard to go back to.
Right, but this game, even in the arcade, had up for jump. So it's not like you got screwed.
Right.
You had to hit up for jump, and that increases the difficulty of the game. In my opinion, wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. I had the most luck. I played this on a variety of platforms and a variety of emulators. So of course I played this a bunch of times on the original 8-bit machine.
Me too. Yeah.
But I was playing the 5200 version on an emulator with an Xbox 360 controller.
Yeah,
and I did too. And I found that using the thumbstick analog with the up for jump, it wasn't so bad because you could just kind of swing your thumb up, and that helped some.
I agree with you on that fully. I did the exact same thing. I loaded the 5200 version just to try it on an emulator, and I had the same exact thought. I used and I also, like I said, I did try mapping up for a button, and that worked too. Worked to help. But yes, this is one game where an analog stick actually helped me quite a bit, which is unusual in these old games. The game has really catchy tunes. Music is good, and the Atari does a good job.
You got your old Susanna.
You've got lots of old Susanna.
You got your Winchester. Winchester chimes is immortalized in the classic British rhyme, apples and oranges, Winchester chimes, St. Martin's Church, etc.
Yeah.
Yep.
this game on my version defaulted toward the advanced level, which I played mostly the advanced. The basic level doesn't start out with the monkey at the top of the screen. The advanced one does. And so I played most of the time. I played on advanced. I have played this game quite a bit. I'm a decent hand at it both. From back, I mostly played the arcade version. I'll admit that, but this is close enough to where my skills translated over. Occasionally, you'll come across a monkey you can punch or the ape you can punch.
Oh, actually, we should talk about one thing that's missing, one major element that's missing from the Atari 8-bit game that's in the arcade version.
The big guy.
The big ape. Yeah.
Yeah, the big guy, he's not here.
Yeah.
The big guy with the punching gloves.
Yeah, so the big ape is actually, I guess, his canonical name. He looks sort of like Grape Ape. Are you familiar with Grape Ape, Aaron?
He's not. All apes look like Grape Ape, except he's not grape.
Listen, he looks like Grape Ape. And he takes your boxing glove away. He takes away your offensive capabilities. I've always hated Grape Ape.
Well, I never, in the arcade, I never tangled with him. And, of course, that's not a problem on the home version. But I never fight anybody if I can help it. Unless there's somebody that's just an obvious target, I always flee on these games. Now, I should mention that there's a bell in these levels. If you ring the bell, and you can sing that song at your leisure, a disco classic, Boat. You know that?
I do. I love it.
Bell. It will have mystery fruit appear, and the mystery fruit is worth points. And if you ring it a couple times, you can get like honeycombs and stuff up here that's worth more points. I believe the first time you ring it, the fruit's worth 200. And I think if you ring it again and you've collected some of the fruit, you can go up to like 800.
Yeah.
And after that, I don't know how far it goes.
This is one of the parts of the game that I think is actually, this is sort of analogous to the bucket in the first level of Popeye, where it's almost useless because this game is so hard. You'd have to be an excellent hand to try and press for points at this game to ring the bell and then go back down the ladders and recollect the fruit. A lot of chutzpah. Yeah. I've never wanted to do that nor have the desire to do that because once you get up to those upper platforms, you've worked hard to get there.
Well, I would go in the first level to do it because I felt like I was pretty comfortable with getting up there. But now, one thing you've got to consider, much like Donkey Kong, there's a time limit rolling, and so the longer you take to get to your baby, first of all, do you think about how morbid that is? There's a time limit to get your baby. Your baby has been held captive by monkeys. It's got a mask on, but your kangaroo mama takes the time to go and get more food. It's like, well, I'll get to the baby later. He's okay.
Well, it's like how how Pauline must feel if she sees Mario going to town with that stupid hammer, you know.
Right, but the thing is, in that game, he's picking up stuff that belongs to her. This is different. This is like your kid's being held captive, and you stop by Walmart to go grocery shop on the way to pick him up.
I guess you're right.
You know, and so there's something to be said, but still, for point pushing, ringing a bell is sort of a big deal. Now, we should talk about the second level of this, which is what I call the freak level. This level has a stack of monkeys holding a platform with your baby on it. And your object is to go beat the tar out of these suckers, and one at a time until you get the platform to where you could get hold of the baby.
This is just like, what's the game where you beat up the car? Is the mini game?
Street Fighter. Yeah. Street Fighter 2. Yeah. Is that what that is?
It's very similar.
I didn't make that. I didn't make the comparison there. You just punch these guys. Of course, while you're punching monkeys, other monkeys are throwing crap at you because that's what monkeys do. You know, and then you're got to avoid it, and then you got to keep punching. Eventually, you get to the point. Now you can actually go up platforms to try to get instead of doing this, but I always just punch the monkeys until these guys
drops down to you can jump up there.
That's the third level.
Right.
It is the second level. I should mention on the second level. There's what I like to call the jump of death. That this truly separates people that know how to play this game from suckers. And this is the jump that you have to make with a diagonal long jump. It's the first one you come to in the game. And if you don't know how to play this game, you always die there.
Absolutely.
I watch people in the arcade. I would just sit back and watch and bam, die. You have to time this perfectly. And I will say the home version of this is just as difficult. You have to time the jump perfectly to get across to the next level. And there are a couple of these jumps of death on that second level. Like I said, the third level is the monkey column, and the fourth level is more platforming. I like this game overall, Boat. I've always enjoyed it. I've never been great at it, but I've been good enough to be dangerous. You know, it's this is a more depressing game to me than Pooyan. I don't know why, because they're sort of the same, you know, in a lot of ways in terms of the storyline, you know. But this game, I don't know. I always feel bad when the mama gets killed. She careens off the platform and she's
flailing. Yeah,
it looks so sad. You just you feel so bad about that, you know. And so, this is a game that strikes a weird chord for me.
You know, I know that you sort of gave a big spiel at the beginning about this. You know, people comparing this to Donkey Kong. I think that this game deserves being called the Donkey Kong clone more than most. Because you are essentially doing the same thing where you have a captive at the top of the screen. You're trying to reach the top of the screen by negotiating a series of platforms. This is, I don't know. To me, the game is, I think it's easier than Donkey Kong, even in its arcade version. I like the fact that the monkeys are that they maneuver up and down the screen the way that they do, rather than the sort of, you know, I'm setting up comparisons to Donkey Kong here. I like the way that the monkeys sort of maneuver themselves in a organic way. They act like monkeys act, versus when you have the fireballs and the oil barrels, they just sort of move around randomly. Do I think that this is a better game than Donkey Kong? Yeah, I think I do. I know that you're shocked by this because you love Donkey Kong.
I'm shocked by this.
But I think the thing that I like about this game is that you have an offensive weapon that stays with you at all time. When you are Jumpman in Donkey Kong, you are defenseless, you know, well, I mean, it can be up to 100% of the time. You're not forced to ever grab a hammer. In this game, you have a way to fight back, and I like games that give you at least an offensive weapon. I will say that the level design in this game is very odd. The third level in particular is just weird. I understand that they were trying to probably mix it up a little bit, but it is weird. It is weird.
The level design is what I would call remedial.
Yeah. I mean, I'll agree with you.
Think about that when you come to compare this to Donkey Kong. I mean, the level design this is nowhere in the same galaxy as the level design of Donkey Kong. Plus, there's not a awesome ending like Donkey Kong where you actually vanquish your foe at the end. You actually, in this, just sort of, what are your kids doing? Just repeatedly getting kidnapped? These kids are idiots. At least when you go to rescue Pauline at the end, there's some closure.
Yeah, I mean, this game definitely does not have the level of polish that Donkey Kong has, even in its arcade version. But I enjoy playing this game more than Donkey Kong. I'll say it straight up. I do. I have a better time playing Kangaroo than I do Donkey Kong.
I think, part of that's because you're better at this, I'd wager.
That has a lot to do with it, I'm sure.
I don't think this is easier, though. I mean, of course, I'm really good at Donkey Kong and not great at this, so I would say I do like, again, I don't think, yes, there are some similarities, but the monkeys, I think, are interesting in this. I like monkeys, number one, in games. I just like monkeys. I like the fact that these monkeys kidnap this kangaroo. That in itself I'd love to see that. Where's the cutscene with that? And then you've got monkeys that are just trying to screw with you. That's all they're doing. I don't think the monkeys are going to hurt the baby. They're just screwing with you. You know, they throw stuff. I like the way they move. You know, I do like in the arcade with the big monkey. I mean, although I never fight him if I can help it, but usually it's right your way.
Why do you think they didn't include Big Ape in this?
Well, who could say?
Yeah.
Graphic reasons. It could be a limitation of the system.
But I mean, it seems like an automation. Maybe
I never saw him, but I didn't know he wasn't here.
It might be because Big Ape on his own. I mean, I found playing the arcade game that Big Ape was pretty easy to avoid. He wasn't exactly a Bluto, you know, where he was constantly in your face.
No, he's not like Bluto. I will say, if you compare this to like Popeye. Popeye had sort of real simple levels as well, except for the second level. But I think Popeye's got a lot more character than this. But this. Listen, like I said, I compare this closely to Pooyan in terms of because the story's the same. It's another classic game from the era of classic games. That's the problem with Kangaroo. How's this thing going to stand out when all the luminaries, all the games released at that time were so awesome?
Yeah.
81, 82.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember playing this in the arcade, and people played it. So it's not like this thing was a dud. When I looked at how many systems this had been released on, I was stunned. How did this not get released on more systems? It's not graphically difficult. Well, it's not super advanced. It makes me wonder why people didn't want to play it.
The only thing I can think of is that, this was released in 82. In 83, there was the crash, and when Nintendo came along, they had plenty of arcade luminaries to pump. They didn't need to go begging Sun to give them a license to put this on the Famicom.
I think this is just graphically simple enough to where it didn't appeal to the advancing consoles. Mm-hmm. And you're right, it may have fallen in that little crease where where the crash killed it for the 8-bits, and then the lack of advancement killed it for the 16 bits. Plus, Nintendo had Donkey Kong. Why do they need the Donkey Kong? The alleged Donkey Kong knockoff. They didn't need that,
right,
I guess.
Right.
But you'd think, and Atari put it out, but even Atari abandoned this thing pretty early.
It is insane to me.
Only 2 versions.
It's insane to me that this doesn't have. Now, have you ever? I mean, surely there's got to be a CoCo clone of this game. This seems like a game that screams for a CoCo clone.
Well, I don't know if Curtis is still in here, but I can't think of a Kangaroo ripoff or a clone of this. I can't think of one.
I mean, I would call. I mean, you just call it Joey. It's a perfect.
Oh yeah. Listen. Hey, you're good to go. Write this sucker. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't remember one. Mm-hmm. But overall, just to sum up, is this one I go back to? No. Is it one that I play occasionally and have some affection for? Yes. And I thought they did an admirable job porting this over. Whether the strawberries were pink, purple, or red, it didn't matter to me. But I will say, having played the 5200 version of this and played the 8-bit version, they're exactly the same. I would personally play the 8-bit version just because you'd get better joysticks. Mm-hmm. If you want the truth.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. Now, I did get a score, a review score on this. Believe it or not, Boat, someone scored this in 82, November of 82. Arcade Express gave the arcade version this 8 out of 10, and then they followed up in 83 and gave the same score to, or excuse me, 84. They gave the same score to this. This was awarded the 1984 Best Arcade to Home Video Game Translation at the 5th Annual ARCI Awards. We love the ARCIs.
I do love the ARCIs.
And the judges noted that all aspects of the game look and play as a virtual duplicate of the arcade version. So there you go.
Wow. High praise indeed.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing I should mention. Remember the old, and I saw this on the wiki, and I had to mention it because I thought it was amusing. Remember the old Saturday morning Supercade? I know this is before your time, but I remember it. It's where they had the video games on Saturday morning cartoons. Mm-hmm. Do you remember Saturday morning cartoons, by the way?
It's been a while. It's been a long time.
Were those a thing when you were growing
up?
Oh,
yeah. I mean, you got to realize that it wasn't really, I would say, until the advent of things like Cartoon Network, where you had a station that literally played cartoons all day, and that wasn't until the late 90s.
I mean, when I was a kid, Saturday morning, you get up at like 6 a.m., mm-hmm. and it was cartoons all day, and that was the only time you saw cartoons.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
It's a foreign concept now. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the Saturday Supercade was where they had the arcade games that got cartoons. This game was good enough, or a big enough deal, to where this game got a cartoon. The cartoon, the Kangaroo and Space Ace, according to Wiki, replaced Pitfall Harry, Frogger, and Donkey Kong Jr. in the CBS Saturday Supercade. The cartoon revolved around the kangaroos Katie and Joey. There you go, Joey, who live in a zoo ran by a zookeeper named Mr. Friendly. And it's never been released for home consumption. So it's funny to look back at the Saturday Supercades. Every game that they put on there had to have been of some popularity. And I would say if you look at all the games on there, this game would rate somewhere near the bottom. Alongside Space Ace and Donkey Kong Jr. as the games. If you think about the games that were released on there, those games are kind of at the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. Would you say is this a bigger deal than Donkey Kong Jr.?
Well, you have to look at you have to go beyond the game. Like if you're doing cartoons, having a kangaroo, a cartoon kangaroo that's attractive to kids. Kids love kangaroos.
I agree.
Kids, there's tons of like Space Ace type people out there in a variety of roles. I can see why they dropped Space Ace in favor of an anthropomorphic kangaroo.
No, Space Ace came in with this
guy.
Oh,
it came in with him.
They dropped Pitfall. Let's see, they dropped Pitfall Harry.
Pitfall Harry is kind of a dweeb. You don't want Pitfall Harry.
That was a good cartoon. I used to watch that.
I don't know about that.
Come on, man. Yeah, but that shows you this game had some popularity. I guess is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
That Saturday Super K was garbage, hot garbage. I used to watch it and just be disgusted at all of it. And when they did the Dragon Slayer cartoon, I was absolutely disgusted. I was like, this doesn't look like the arcade at all. This looks like some hacks drew it. Right. And they did.
Right.
Horrible. I should mention, I looked this up on eBay, Boatster, and I could not find anyone selling or have bought this anytime recently on the 8-bit.
Well, the only way that it is available is through that APX disc, which I imagine is extensionally rare. So
8 out of 10. Did we get any Discords on this, Bo?
We did not get any Discord reviews this week. I will remind our fine Patreons of any of the shows on Amigos Retro Gaming that you are free to leave us a review in the 1200XL Reviews channel, and we'll be happy to read it on the next edition of the show.
I think people are hesitant to play some of these old 8-bit Atari games, especially a game like Kangaroo. But I really would urge, because maybe they think it's just passe. I really would urge you to give it a shot. Sometimes you find a real hidden gem, and I think this game is a perfect example of an 8-bit Atari game that probably doesn't get talked about that much. But I mean, now granted, it was a 5200 clone, but like both, they're basically the same system. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot here to enjoy. And if you haven't played this, this is one I would put on your radar to give a shot. But I think it's there's a lot of crap out there for the 8-bits. There's a lot of good stuff, and this was definitely on the good stuff side.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, guys. Well, we want to thank all the fine folks that are watching us live on Twitch right now. We do record 1200XL on Fridays on twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. You can join the party like Polyester Links, Edvin Helland, Picard 2010, Mitsuyama, Barkbit, Pixels at Dawn doing a fantastic job modding in the chat room. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us late at night in Europe, if you are with us from across the pond, as it were.
Stay awake.
And we will be back next month with another edition of 1200XL. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.